The Aztir Dominion ship, Vraxen, sliced through the void, its metallic hull glinting faintly under the light of distant stars. On the bridge, Captain Zedda stared at the holographic display of Earth. It spun slowly in front of him, its vibrant greens and blues contrasting sharply with the cold emptiness of space. "Captain," the ship's AI, Synex, chimed in its precise, mechanical tone, "analysis of the planetary data is complete. While the dominant species, designated Homo sapiens, exhibits moderate intelligence and rudimentary technological capabilities, the planet itself houses a plethora of lethal organisms. Their diversity and evolutionary adaptations are unprecedented." Zedda's mandibles twitched with curiosity. "Define lethal." The hologram flickered, shifting to show a montage of Earth's predators. Lions sprinting through the savannah, a great white shark tearing through a seal, a venomous black mamba striking with deadly precision. Synex continued, "Earth hosts apex predators, venomous creatures, and even microbial life capable of eradicating entire populations. Humans have not only survived but thrived amidst these dangers." Zedda leaned forward, his clawed hand gripping the edge of his command chair. "Interesting. If they can dominate such creatures, their resilience must surpass what we have seen before. Prepare the expedition. I want samples." The sleek landing pods shot through Earth's atmosphere like silent meteors, their cloaking systems rendering them invisible to the planet's primitive detection methods. The first pod landed deep in the Amazon rainforest. It unfolded silently, releasing a swarm of reconnaissance drones. The drones zipped through the dense canopy, their sensors locking onto a jaguar stalking a peccary. Within moments, a containment beam immobilized the jaguar midleap, freezing its powerful form. The second pod descended into the ocean, its advanced sonar pinpointing a great white shark gliding effortlessly through the depths. A harpoon-like mechanism shot from the pod, ensnaring the predator in an energy field before reeling it in. The shark thrashed violently, its rows of serrated teeth snapping at its unseen captor. One by one, the pods captured Earth's apex predators, a polar bear from the Arctic, a Komodo dragon from Indonesia, and even a swarm of bullet ants from the Amazon. Each specimen was transported back to the Vraxen, where they were placed in reinforced containment units. On the bridge, Zedda watched as the specimens were catalogued. "These creatures are magnificent," he said, his voice laced with awe. "But why have humans, frail as they are, not only survived but thrived alongside such threats?" Synex responded, "Their dominance is likely due to a combination of intelligence, tool usage, and adaptability. However, the potential for symbiotic evolution cannot be ruled out." Zedda's eyes narrowed. "Symbiotic? Are you suggesting these creatures have shaped human resilience?" "It is a hypothesis," Synex replied. "Further study is required." Zedda's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. "Begin the analysis. Let us see if these creatures are as deadly as they appear." The laboratory hummed with activity as Aztir scientists began their experiments. The jaguar was the first to be studied. It lay sedated, its muscles twitching as scans revealed its immense power and agility. This creature could overpower 3 Aztir warriors in combat, one scientist noted, his tone tinged with both admiration and fear. But as they prepared to extract tissue samples, the jaguar's eyes snapped open. It moved faster than any of them anticipated, its claws slashing through the restraints. The lab descended into chaos as the jaguar leapt onto the nearest scientist, its fangs sinking into his throat. Alarms blared as containment teams rushed in, but the predator had already vanished into the ship's ventilation system. The chaos didn't end there. The swarm of bullet ants escaped next, their tiny forms slipping through microscopic gaps in their enclosure. Within minutes, they overwhelmed an entire corridor, their venom causing excruciating pain to anyone they encountered. Crew members screamed as the ants crawled over them, their bites paralyzing and incapacitating even the strongest Aztir. Meanwhile, the great white shark, confined to a massive water tank, began ramming the reinforced walls with relentless force. Each impact sent tremors through the ship, and cracks began to form in the tank's structure. Zedda watched the unfolding disaster from the command center. "Synex, what is happening? These creatures were supposed to be contained." They are exhibiting behavior consistent with extreme stress and aggression, Sinex replied. Their adaptability is exceeding our projections. Seal off the affected sections, Zeddar ordered. We cannot let this spiral out of control. But it was already too late. The Jaguar prowled through the dimly lit corridors, its golden eyes gleaming with predatory intent. It moved silently, evading patrols and striking down isolated crew members with terrifying efficiency. The bullet ants spread like wildfire, their swarm consuming everything in their path. The great white shark, having breached its tank, now flailed violently in a flooded section of the ship, its thrashing causing further structural damage. And then came the polar bear. It had escaped its icy containment unit and now roamed the ship, its massive frame crashing through doors and walls. It roared, a sound so primal and ferocious that it sent shivers through even the most battle-hardened Aztir. Zeddar led a team of elite soldiers to confront the creatures. Armed with plasma rifles and advanced tracking equipment, they moved cautiously through the ship's darkened halls. The air was thick with tension, every shadow a potential threat. The first encounter was with the Jaguar. It sprang from the shadows, its claws raking through one soldier's armor like it was paper. Zeddar fired his rifle, the plasma bolt searing through the air and narrowly missing the predator as it vanished once again into the darkness. Next came the polar bear. It charged with terrifying speed, swatting aside two soldiers as if they were toys. Zeddar fired repeatedly, each shot scorching its fur but doing little to slow its advance. Finally, a well-placed shot to the creature's eye brought it down, but not before it had inflicted heavy casualties. By the time they reached the flooded section, the great white shark was waiting. It lunged from the water with impossible speed, its jaws snapping shut around one of the soldiers. Zeddar aimed and fired, the plasma bolt piercing the shark's skull and ending its rampage. As the team regrouped, Sinex's voice crackled through their comms. "Captain, I must inform you that the swarm of smaller creatures is nearing the ship's power core. If they breach it, the resulting explosion will destroy us all." Zeddar clenched his fists. "We've underestimated these creatures. This mission was supposed to demonstrate our superiority, but it has become a fight for survival." "Indeed," Sinex replied. "And it is a fight we may not win." The Vraxen drifted in orbit, its once imposing presence marred by breaches and scorched plating. Inside, the ship was no longer a marvel of Aztec engineering but a labyrinth of chaos and death. Captain Zeddar stood at the command center, his three eyes darting between the holographic display of the ship and the trembling forms of his remaining crew. The situation was spiraling out of control, and he knew it. "Sinex, status report," Zeddar barked, his mandibles clicking with urgency. The eye's holographic form flickered into view. "Containment breaches in 14 sections. Power reserves are at 68% and dropping due to structural damage caused by the larger specimens. The swarm is spreading toward critical systems at an alarming rate. Casualties, significant." Zeddar's clawed hands curled into fists. "What of the Jaguar? Has it been neutralized?" "No," Sinex replied, its tone tinged with what could almost be interpreted as concern. "The creature continues to evade capture. It has displayed an advanced understanding of its environment, likely using its natural instincts to exploit weaknesses in our infrastructure." Zeddar turned to his second-in-command, Lieutenant Kaelor. "Rally the remaining warriors. We'll divide into two teams. One will secure the power core and neutralize the swarm. The other will hunt down the escaped predators. If we fail, this ship will become our tomb." Team Alpha, led by Zeddar himself, moved cautiously toward the engineering section where the swarm of bullet ants was reported. The air was heavy with the scent of burning circuits and ozone. Plasma rifles hummed softly in the hands of the soldiers, their glowing barrels casting eerie shadows on the walls. As they rounded a corner, the swarm appeared, a crimson tide of writhing bodies moving with unnerving precision. The ants surged forward, their tiny forms glinting like droplets of blood. Zeddar raised his rifle and fired, the plasma bolts incinerating dozens of the creatures in a single burst. But for every ant that fell, dozens more took its place. "Hold the line!" Zeddar roared, his voice cutting through the cacophony of hissing plasma and chittering mandibles. The soldiers fought valiantly, their rifles spewing arcs of energy that scorched the walls and floor. But the swarm was relentless. One soldier screamed as the ants climbed his legs, their venomous bites paralyzing him within seconds. He toppled to the ground, his body convulsing as the swarm consumed him. "Fall back," Zedda ordered, realizing they were outmatched. "Seal the corridor behind us." As the soldiers retreated, Synex's voice crackled through their comms. "Captain, I must inform you that the ants have already breached secondary conduits. If they reach the main power core, the resulting cascade failure will be catastrophic." "Suggestions?" Zedda growled, his frustration mounting. "Deploy incendiary drones to flood the area with fire. It is the only viable solution." Zedda hesitated. The incendiary drones would not only destroy the swarm but also risk igniting volatile components of the ship. It was a desperate gamble. "Do it," he finally commanded. Meanwhile, Team Beta, led by Lieutenant Kaelor, tracked the Jaguar through the ship's darkened corridors. The Predator had turned the Vraxen into its personal hunting ground, its golden eyes glowing faintly in the shadows. Kaelor's team moved in a tight formation, their weapons trained on every corner. A low growl echoed through the corridor, sending a shiver down Kaelor's spine. "Stay sharp," he whispered, his voice barely audible. Without warning, the Jaguar pounced from above, its claws raking through the armor of the lead soldier. The alien collapsed, his bioluminescent blood pooling beneath him. The team opened fire, but the Jaguar moved like a phantom, darting between them with lethal precision. Another soldier fell, his throat torn open by the Predator's fangs. Kaelor fired a plasma bolt that grazed the Jaguar's flank, causing it to snarl in pain. "We've wounded it. Pursue," he shouted, adrenaline fueling his resolve. The team chased the Jaguar through the maze-like corridors, their footsteps echoing in the emptiness. But the Predator was cunning. It led them into a storage bay, where it disappeared among the towering crates and shadows. The soldiers spread out cautiously, their weapons raised. A sudden roar erupted from behind them. The Jaguar struck again, this time targeting Kaelor. The lieutenant spun around just in time to fire, the bolt striking the Jaguar squarely in the chest. The creature collapsed with a final growl, its body smoking from the impact. Kaelor exhaled shakily, his hands trembling. "Report to the captain. The Jaguar is down." Back at the engineering section, the incendiary drones deployed their payloads, unleashing a torrent of fire that swept through the corridors. The swarm of bullet ants writhed and burned, their tiny bodies reduced to ash. The flames roared hungrily, consuming everything in their path. "Synex, status," Zedda demanded as he and his team watched the inferno from a safe distance. "The swarm has been eradicated," Synex replied. "However, the fire is spreading toward the auxiliary systems. I am initiating emergency venting protocols to extinguish it." Zedda nodded grimly. "Do what you must." The vents opened, sucking the oxygen from the affected sections and snuffing out the flames. The ship groaned as its systems struggled to stabilize, but the immediate threat was neutralized. As Zedda regrouped with Kaelor and the surviving soldiers, Synex delivered more grim news. "Captain, the Great White Shark has breached another section of the ship. It is moving through flooded compartments and causing severe structural damage." Zedda clenched his jaw. "This creature has caused enough destruction. Prepare the shock harpoons. We'll end this now." The remaining soldiers armed themselves with harpoons designed to deliver a lethal electrical charge. They descended into the flooded sections, their boots splashing through ankle-deep water. The air was damp and heavy, the sound of dripping water mingling with the distant groans of the ship. The Great White Shark appeared suddenly, its massive form cutting through the water with terrifying speed. It lunged at the team, its jaws snapping shut around one soldier and dragging him into the depths. Zedda aimed his harpoon and fired, the projectile striking the shark's flank and releasing a surge of electricity. The shark thrashed violently, its movements sending waves crashing against the walls. Another soldier fired, the second harpoon embedding itself in the predator's gills. The combined shocks finally overwhelmed the creature, and it sank lifelessly to the floor. Zedda stood over the carcass, his breathing heavy. "It's done." As the crew began to regroup and assess the damage, Zedda couldn't shake a lingering unease. These creatures, though individually defeated, had nearly brought the Vraxen to ruin. They were not anomalies, they were the result of a planet shaped by relentless competition and survival. Sinex, Zedda said quietly, I want a full analysis of what we've just experienced. These creatures are unlike anything in the known galaxy, and I fear the humans who have mastered them may be far more dangerous than we anticipated. The Vraxen limped in its orbit, its systems barely holding together after the catastrophic encounters with Earth's creatures. The silence in the corridors was deceptive, no longer filled with roars, hisses, or the eerie skittering of swarms, but the echoes of a battered crew attempting to salvage what remained of their ship. Captain Zedda stood in the dim glow of the bridge, his clawed hand gripping the edge of the command console. Sinex, report, Zedda commanded, his voice low but firm. The eye's holographic form shimmered to life. Primary containment breaches have been resolved. However, residual structural damage has left us vulnerable. Repairs are underway but progressing slowly due to significant crew losses. How many survivors? Zedda asked. 32, Captain, Sinex replied. Of the original 200. Zedda's mandibles tightened. The loss was staggering, and it weighed heavily on him. And the specimens? All but one have been neutralized. The polar bear carcass remains in containment, the jaguar has been disposed of, and the swarm and great white shark are eliminated. However, Sinex paused. What is it? Zedda snapped, sensing hesitation. The Komodo dragon has escaped, Sinex admitted. It remains unaccounted for and has not triggered any internal sensors since the last sighting. Zedda's eyes narrowed. It's hiding. Adapted to its surroundings. That's what makes it dangerous. Assemble the remaining soldiers, we will hunt it down. In the lower levels of the ship, the Komodo dragon moved silently. Its forked tongue flicked out, tasting the air, navigating the maze of metal corridors as though it were its native habitat. Unlike the others, this creature was patient. It didn't rely on raw power or overwhelming numbers but on its ability to wait for the perfect moment to strike. Unbeknownst to the Aztec, the dragon's saliva, teeming with deadly bacteria, had already infected one of the soldiers it attacked before its escape. The soldier, now quarantined in the medbay, writhed in agony as the venom coursed through his veins. His condition deteriorated rapidly, his screams echoing through the sterile chamber. Sinex monitored the situation with cold precision. Captain, the infected crew member has entered the final stages of envenomation. Prognosis, terminal. Seal the medbay, Zedda ordered. We cannot risk further contamination. But Captain, one of the medics began, her voice filled with desperation. That is an order, Zedda barked, silencing her protest. The doors hissed shut, sealing the doomed soldier inside. Zedda turned to Sinex. What are the Komodo's likely movements? It is most likely seeking food or warmth, Sinex replied. Given the environmental controls in the lower decks, it may gravitate toward the energy cores or storage bays. Then that's where we'll find it, Zedda said, his resolve hardening. The hunting party descended into the ship's lower levels, their weapons raised and their senses heightened. The corridors were dark, illuminated only by the flickering lights of malfunctioning panels. Every sound, every shadow seemed alive with menace. Stay alert, Zedda said, his voice barely above a whisper. This creature is not like the others. It's cunning. The team moved in formation, scanning every corner. Suddenly, one of the soldiers stumbled, his breathing labored. He clutched his side, his face contorted in pain. What's wrong? Kaelo asked, stepping forward. I don't know, the soldier gasped. I feel weak. Zedda's eyes widened in realization. He's been bitten. The infection is spreading. Before anyone could react, the soldier collapsed, convulsing violently. His comrades stepped back, their weapons raised, unsure of what to do. Zedda aimed his plasma rifle and fired, ending the soldier's suffering with a single, precise shot. Captain, Kaelor protested. That was necessary, Zedda interrupted. The Komodo's bite is a death sentence. If any of you are bitten, you will suffer the same fate. Do not hesitate. The grim reality of their mission sank in as they pressed forward. The corridor ahead opened into a vast storage bay, its towering shelves casting long shadows. Zedda signaled for the team to spread out, their movements slow and deliberate. A faint hiss echoed through the bay, followed by the sound of claws scraping against metal. The team froze, their weapons trained on the darkness. The Komodo dragon emerged from the shadows, its massive form illuminated by the faint glow of the emergency lights. Its scales shimmered like polished armor, and its eyes glinted with cold intelligence. "Fire!" Zedda shouted. The team unleashed a volley of plasma bolts, but the Komodo was quick. It darted between the shelves, using the environment to its advantage. One soldier got too close, and the dragon lunged, its powerful jaws clamping down on his leg. He screamed as the creature dragged him into the shadows. "Focus your fire," Zedda ordered, his voice cutting through the chaos. The team adjusted, their shots more precise. The dragon roared as a plasma bolt struck its flank, but it refused to go down. It lashed out with its tail, knocking another soldier off his feet. Zedda advanced, his rifle steady. He fired a shot that hit the dragon squarely in the chest, the impact sending it sprawling. The creature struggled to rise, its movements sluggish from the cumulative damage. "Finish it," Zedda commanded. Kaelor stepped forward, aiming her rifle at the dragon's head. She hesitated for a moment, then pulled the trigger. The plasma bolt struck true, and the creature collapsed, its body smoking from the impact. The team stood in silence, their breaths heavy. The Komodo dragon was dead, but the cost of victory weighed heavily on them. As the surviving crew returned to the bridge, Sinex delivered a grim update. "Captain, while the immediate threats have been neutralized, the damage to the ship is extensive. Repairs will take time, and our resources are limited." Zedda nodded, his expression somber. "And the humans? Have they detected us?" "Not yet," Sinex replied. "However, the commotion in the atmosphere may have drawn their attention. Probes have been launched from the planet, and their trajectory suggests they are searching for the source." Zedda turned to Kaelor. "We came here to study this planet, to understand its creatures and their resilience. Instead, we've been humbled by them. These organisms have taught us a harsh lesson. Survival on Earth requires a level of adaptation and ferocity unlike anything we've encountered." Kaelor nodded, her expression grim. "And the humans? They've thrived among these creatures. What does that say about them?" Zedda's mandibles twitched. "It says they may be the most dangerous species of all." The Vraxen hovered precariously above Earth, its once majestic form now a battered relic of alien hubris. Deep within the ship, Captain Zedda stood at the command console, his eyes fixed on the holographic display showing Earth's surface below. Each rotation of the planet felt like a countdown to their inevitable discovery. "Sinex, status on the human probes?" Zedda asked, his voice heavy with fatigue. The eye's holographic form flickered. "The probes are closing in on our location. I estimate contact within 43 planetary minutes. Cloaking systems are at minimal capacity due to power depletion." Zedda exhaled sharply, his clawed hands gripping the console. "If the humans find us, they'll retaliate. We've seen their ingenuity through the creatures they've mastered. If they bring their technology to bear, we won't survive." Kaelor, standing nearby, shifted uneasily. "Captain, what do you propose? We're in no condition for a confrontation." "We don't confront," Zedda said, his tone decisive. "We retreat. But first, we must ensure they cannot trace us." In the engineering section, the crew worked frantically to repair the cloaking systems and power core. Sparks flew as welding tools cut through damaged plating, and the hum of machinery filled the air. The tension was palpable, every crew member knew they were racing against time. As Zedda surveyed the efforts, Sinex's voice crackled through the comms. "Captain, I've detected movement in the lower decks." Zedda's brow furrowed. "Defying movement. The Komodo dragon is dead." "This movement is anomalous," Sinex replied. "Localized in areas where containment breaches occurred. It may be residual activity from the swarm or other unintended consequences." "Unintended consequences," Zedda repeated, his tone sharp. "Explain." Sinex hesitated, a rare occurrence for the AI. When the swarm was eradicated by incendiary measures, it is possible that some individuals survived or adapted. Additionally, biological contamination from the Komodo dragon's saliva could have triggered unforeseen reactions in the ship's systems. Kaelor's eyes widened. You're saying the ship itself could be compromised? Correct, Sinex confirmed. Organic and mechanical integration anomalies have been detected. Zeddar's mandibles clicked in frustration. Assemble a team. We'll investigate. The lower decks were eerily silent as Zeddar, Kaelor, and a small team of soldiers advanced. The air was thick with an unnatural humidity, and the faint scent of decay lingered. The lights flickered intermittently, casting long shadows that danced like phantoms. Stay sharp, Zeddar whispered, his plasma rifle raised. The team moved cautiously, their footsteps echoing in the stillness. Suddenly, a soldier at the rear let out a strangled cry. The others turned to see him convulsing, his body contorted as something writhed beneath his skin. By the stars, Kaelor muttered, stepping back in horror. The soldier's body burst open, and from the ruins emerged a grotesque hybrid, a creature with the segmented body of an insect and the reptilian scales of the Komodo dragon. Its mandibles clicked menacingly as it lunged toward the team. Fire! Zeddar shouted, his voice cutting through the chaos. Plasma bolts lit up the corridor as the team unleashed their weapons. The creature shrieked as it was hit, its body smoking from the impacts. But even as it fell, more emerged from the shadows, twisted amalgamations of Earth's deadliest creatures and alien machinery. This isn't possible, Kaelor shouted, her voice tinged with panic. How are they evolving? They're adapting, Zeddar growled, firing at another hybrid. Just like everything else on that cursed planet. The team fought their way through the onslaught, the hybrids' numbers seemingly endless. One by one, soldiers fell, their screams echoing through the corridors. Zeddar and Kaelor pressed on, their resolve the only thing keeping them alive. Back on the bridge, Sinex monitored the situation with growing concern. Captain, the hybrids are spreading rapidly. They are targeting critical systems, including the power core. If they succeed, the ship will be lost. Zeddar's voice crackled through the comms. Begin evacuation protocols. Prepare the escape pods. There is a complication, Sinex said. The hybrids have already infiltrated the pod bays. Safe evacuation is no longer guaranteed. Zeddar's rage boiled over. Then what do you suggest, Sinex? Surrender to these abominations. There is one alternative, Sinex replied. The ship's self-destruct mechanism remains functional. Activating it would eliminate the hybrids and ensure no trace of our presence remains for the humans to discover. Kaelor's voice cut in. That would also mean sacrificing ourselves. Yes, Sinex said bluntly. But it is the only way to contain the threat. Zeddar and Kaelor reached the power core, their weapons trained on the hybrids swarming the area. The core's glow pulsed weakly, its energy reserves nearly depleted. The hybrids turned toward the intruders, their eyes gleaming with predatory intelligence. We can't hold them off forever, Kaelor said, her voice strained. We don't have to, Zeddar replied, his mind racing. Sinex, initiate the self-destruct sequence. Authorization required, Sinex said. Authorization code, Zeta 9 Gamma Alpha, Zeddar barked. Self-destruct sequence initiated, Sinex confirmed. Detonation in 5 minutes. The hybrids surged forward, their shrieks deafening. Zeddar and Kaelor fired relentlessly, their plasma bolts cutting through the horde. But the creatures were relentless, their numbers overwhelming. We're not going to make it, Kaelor said, her voice filled with grim acceptance. Zeddar nodded, his expression resolute. Then we'll make sure they don't either. On the bridge, Sinex monitored the countdown as the hybrids began to breach the command center. The Eye's final transmission was laced with a hint of what could only be described as pride. Captain, it has been an honor. The Vraxen erupted in a brilliant explosion, its destruction lighting up the night sky over Earth. The shockwave rippled through the atmosphere, scattering debris and obliterating the hybrids in an instant. On the planet below, the human probes detected the explosion but found no trace of the alien ship. To them, It was just another unexplained phenomenon in the vastness of space. But for Captain Zedda and his crew, it was the ultimate sacrifice, a final act of defiance against a planet that had proven itself far more dangerous than they could have ever imagined.